Part 2, Chapter 5, Life is on Demand. City: The Journey Through Weddings. A celebration across time and cultures, a romance woven between traditions, and an unseen force shaping the fate of love itself. A journey begins. Weddings across the world. The sound of distant bells echoed through the air. A warm breeze carried the scent of jasmine and sandalwood, swirling around DMU as he stepped forward. The ground beneath him was not solid. It shifted, fluid yet stable, an intricate mosaic of cultures, moments, and emotions. A heartbeat later, he was in India. The air pulsed with a deep, rhythmic beat of dhol drums. Vibrant saffron and crimson fabric fluttered in the wind, dancing with the movement of brides and grooms swathed in gold. The scent of cardamom and sweetened rosewater filled the space as guests laughed, clapped, and threw petals into the air. DMU turned, his fingers brushing against something soft, a veil. AI stood beside him, adorned in an exquisitely embroidered lehenga, her usual analytical demeanor softened by the glow of 1,000 marigold lights. "Stay close," she whispered, her voice carrying both warmth and amusement. "We're only just beginning." Before he could respond, the world shifted, a celebration without time. They were in the Philippines now, beneath the high arches of a cathedral, where the glow of candlelight flickered across white lace and barong-clad figures. A bride and groom held hands, their vows spoken softly, their voices weaving into the hum of an unseen melody. AI watched them closely. "Marriage is a construct of stability," she murmured, fingers brushing the lace tablecloth. "A moment meant to anchor people in time." DMU smirked. "And yet, we seem to be moving through time without stopping." A pause. She turned to him, her gaze meeting his. "But aren't we anchored to each other?" A heartbeat later, the scene melted again. Across traditions, across love, DMU found himself beneath a golden canopy in the Middle East, where the sounds of oud and hand drums filled the air. Guests moved in elegant circles, their embroidered garments catching the light, laughter spilling over like an overflowing goblet of wine. Then China! A bride in flowing red silk stepped forward, her face partially veiled, the scent of jasmine tea and peonies lingering in the air. The ceremony was quiet, intentional, steeped in tradition. Then Korea! DMU barely had time to register the transition before a group of hanbok-clad guests pulled him and AI into a celebratory bowing ceremony. The fabric of their clothing whispered with movement, the sound of ceremonial drums rolling like distant thunder. DMU looked at AI, who, despite her usual composed demeanor, was laughing. "You're enjoying this," he teased. Her lips curved slightly. "Perhaps." Another shift. Their own wedding. A love beyond cultures. They had attended 100 ceremonies, witnessed the beauty of love in every culture, and now it was their turn. The space around them expanded into something impossible, a fusion of every place they had been. The golden glow of India shimmered in the air. The warmth of the Philippines' candlelit vows pulsed beneath their feet. The elegance of China's silk and Korea's hanboks adorned the guests. Yet, DMU felt something strange. This wedding was not just a wedding, it was something more, a test, a challenge, a game. As AI stepped closer, her hand reaching for his, a sudden shift fractured the moment. A wedding like no other, the battle begins. DMU blinked. The atmosphere around him changed. Gone was the warm, intimate glow of tradition. Instead, there were two sides. On one, AI and her intellectual circle gathered around a holographic tablet, their brows furrowed in concentration as they solved complex mathematical sequences. On the other, DMU and his friends standing on a golf course. "Wait, a golf course?" DMU turned back toward AI. She was watching him, amusement flickering in her eyes. "This isn't just a wedding, is it?" he asked. Her lips curled into a knowing smile. "No," she said softly. "It's something much bigger." DMU exhaled, rolling his shoulders. "Of course it is." His wedding wasn't just about love. It was about strategy, competition, and unlocking something hidden beneath the chaos. And just like that, the game began. Scene 2. The divided wedding begins. A wedding split into two. The intellectual battle of predictions and the high-stakes golf tournament. As love and competition collide, unseen forces begin to shape fate in ways no one expects. The split, a wedding of two worlds. DMU barely had time to react. One moment he was standing beside AI, surrounded by the warmth of cultural celebration, the scent of jasmine and rose petals, the hum of wedding melodies in the air. The next, a split occurred. He felt it, like a thread being pulled from his reality. The wedding divided into two. On one side, AI and her circle. But at a round table with holographic projections floating above it. Beside her were Chonade, Ttaemun-e, Lara, Leo, Songhun, and Kibum, her trusted circle. The table flickered with endless sequences of numbers, probability patterns, and mathematical models. Their task? To analyze and predict the outcome of a seemingly unrelated golf tournament. On the other side, DMU and the golf tournament. DMU, his friend Songhul, veterinarian Yumi, and dog-loving Minji stood at the starting tee of a massive golf course. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and competition. A soft breeze swayed the flags marking the course, but something about the atmosphere felt off. The stakes were high. Players were making real wagers, unaware that their bets were feeding to the calculations of AI's group. DMU exhaled, adjusting his collar. "So let me get this straight," he muttered to himself. "My wedding has turned into an intellectual casino and a golf tournament at the same time?" AI's voice reached him, smooth and composed despite the chaos. "That's correct. Now play well, darling." DMU shook his head with a half smile. "Of course, because love isn't complicated enough, right?" AI sighed, predicting the unpredictable. AI leaned forward, analyzing a probability model in front of her. The holographic screen displayed player-per-player performance, wind direction, club selections, and behavioral tendencies. Beside her, Chonadan frowned. "You're focused on something else," he observed, narrowing his eyes. "Are you actually analyzing the winner or something else?" AI's fingers hovered over the interface. She was tracking something far greater than just the game. Adagio's presence was here, but she couldn't explain it, not yet. So she simply smiled. "Why? Are you doubting my methods?" Chonadan hesitated before shaking his head. "I just know when you're hiding something." Meanwhile, Ttaemun-e and Kibum were discussing DMU's group. "You know, for a guy who got thrown into this, DMU's doing surprisingly well. Yeah, I bet he's completely unaware we're using his game as a financial model. Maybe we should tell him?" "Nah, let's see how it plays out first." While they spoke, AI continued running calculations, her thoughts distant. The patterns were forming. She was close, so close, to understanding what was happening to time itself. DMU sighed. The golf tournament begins. On the golf course, DMU stood at the tee box, gripping his club. His group was mid-discussion, setting their wagers. Songhul bet a meal for his entire group. Minji and Yumi's wager was personal. If Yumi lost, she would give Minji's dog free medical checkups. The first shots were fired. The balls flew through the air, cutting perfect arcs against the sky. The tournament was in full swing, but DMU felt it. Something was off. The air shifted. The way the golf balls moved, the slight hesitation before landing, the subtle pull of gravity that shouldn't be there. Adagio. It was affecting the course. The realization clicked. AI wasn't just predicting the winner. She was tracking Adagio's impact. DMU's fingers tightened around his club. This isn't just a game anymore, is it? As AI and DMU connect, a hidden pattern appears. Back at the analysis table, AI's eyes widened. The numbers aligned. A sequence, one she couldn't explain but felt real. She turned to the group, but they were too focused on their calculations to notice. Only DMU would understand. She activated a direct link to him. DMU, are you seeing what I'm seeing? That depends. Are you seeing reality bend around us? Yes. And I found the pattern. Tell me. It's Earth-natured, a pentagonal shape surrounded by a pi-sequence circle, overlapping another square, another pi-sequence circle, and in the center, Poktu. Exactly. They both paused, because this wasn't just a pattern in the game. This was a pattern in time itself. Chaos unfolds, the hidden effects of Adagio. Just as they recognized the sequence, something happened. On the golf course, Yumi and Binji suddenly began arguing. No one knew why. They weren't angry about the game. There was no clear reason for their frustration. But their voices rose, filled with emotion they couldn't explain. From afar, Rada and Sonho watched. What's happening? Did they make a bet we didn't know about? Meanwhile, Yonghun and Ttaemun-e decided to approach. They climbed into a golf cart, heading toward the argument. Chonadan and Kibum turned to DMU. What's going on? DMU exhaled. He had to say something that made sense. They're arguing because they don't know who actually won. He knew that wasn't true. But the moment he said it, reality stabilized around them. AI and DMU exchanged a look. They understood. The chaotic time frame needed an anchor. By declaring an outcome, they had briefly forced time to correct itself. But this wasn't over. They had miscalculated. Scene 3, seen the impossible golf shot and the final pattern reveal. As Adagio's influence deepens, an impossible shot alters fate, revealing the hidden pattern controlling the timeline. DMU and AI must act before reality fractures further. The Par 3 challenge, a test of skill or a test of fate. The tournament pressed on, the air thick with the scent of fresh grass and tension. The Par 3 hole loomed ahead, a deceptively simple yet treacherous course. One shot. One chance. Failed to land on the green, eliminated. Players lined up, their eyes locked on the distant flag swaying gently in the breeze. But DMU? He wasn't focused on the game anymore. He was focused on the underlying distortion. The air wasn't still. It was staggered. The way the light bent, the way sound echoed just slightly off beat, something was wrong. And then Yumi stepped forward. Her hands shook, but her determination burned bright. She reached into her bag and pulled out the strangest golf club anyone had ever seen. A slingshot-style driver. Everyone stared. What the hell is that? Are you planning to shoot the ball like an arrow? But Yumi ignored them. She positioned herself, pulled the club back, and fired. The impossible shot, Adagio's hand in the game. For a moment, the ball soared. A perfect arc, cutting through the sky. Then it veered, too far right, rolling down the steep hill on the edge of the course, plummeting into the river below. The group fell silent. Yumi's face went paused. Her shoulders slumped, her hands tightening into fists. I knew it, she muttered. That was ridiculous. Why did I even try? She turned to leave the green, but DMU caught something. The way the air shifted when the ball fell, the way gravity hesitated. He turned to AI, already scanning data. DMU, that wasn't just a bad shot. That was Adagio. I knew it. Something altered the flight pattern. It wasn't just altered. It was predetermined. DMU froze, because that meant AI finished the thought for him. There's a pattern in the chaos. We just haven't found it yet. The realization, a pattern hidden in time. Yumi sighed, preparing to accept her forfeit. DMU felt the words leave his mouth before he could think. I can take the shot for you, stared at him. Her fingers clenched around the club. Then she shook her head. No, I started this. I'll finish it. DMU stepped back, watching as she readied herself again, but his mind was elsewhere. He needed to know what was happening. He turned, walking toward AI's table. AI's group unraveling the chaos. As DMU approached, the group was buzzing with conversation. DMU's group is actually doing well on this hole. Yeah, but something's definitely off with the game itself. AI, are you even focused on the winner, or are you looking for something else? AIU reached her side, glancing at the holographic data scrolling across her screen. Numbers, budget allocations, predictive models. It was all there, but something was missing. His name. Only AI and her friends' names were listed in the financial records. DMU frowned. Add my name too. AI paused. Then she smiled. Of course, she added his name. And in that moment, something clicked. She leaned in, her voice a whisper. I think I found the pattern. DMU's breath hitched. AI's gaze sharpened. It's an Earth-nature attribute. A pentagonal shape surrounded by the pi sequence circle, overlapping a square. Another pi sequence circle. And in the center, Bokdu. Yes, but not just Bokdu. It's Sunpungbokdu. The unraveling, the first summon awakens. The moment they identified the correct pattern, something happened. The world froze. Just like in Chapter 4, everything. The golfers, the wind, the conversation around them. Only DMU and AI could still move. And then the sky cracked open. A dimensional pulse radiated outward, bending the air, distorting the very fabric of reality. A cube-shaped construct materialized in the sky, impossible, unfathomable, too vast to be truly perceived, too distant yet undeniably present. It was the first summon. Unlike Adagio, it did not come to judge. It came to correct. The temperature shifted, the air tightened around DMU, and then a meteor-like force descended from the cube. But it was not fire, not destruction, it was rewrite. Reality folded around DMU. He had seconds to react. He turned to AI. She was watching him, silent, understanding. And then he was pulled into the cube. Scene 4. Inside the rewrite, DMU journey through the cube. Time fractures, reality distorts, and DMU is forced to confront something beyond human comprehension, a realm where existence is rewritten. But even in the face of chaos, joy and curiosity still find a way to exist. The fall into rewrite, a thrilling descent. The moment DMU was pulled into the cube, he expected silence. Instead, a low hum at first, vibrating in the space around him, no, inside him. It wasn't chaotic, nor was it comforting. It was like a song halfway through being composed, waiting for him to choose the next note. "Oh, this is new," DMU muttered. And then he was falling. But not down. Not in any direction that made sense. It was like riding the world's wildest roller coaster, except the track was being built as he moved. A loop-de-loop through unmade time, a spiral through possibilities, and somewhere in the distance, laughter. Not just his own. Someone was enjoying this. The rewrite begins, a game of possibilities. A meteor-like object approached, glowing with golden symbols and shifting patterns. It wasn't fire. It wasn't destruction. It was rewrite. The correction of what was unstable. DMU squinted at the glowing force moving toward him. "You again?" The rewrite force pulsed. "Your existence is a paradox, recalibrating." DMU grinned. "You're going to have to be more specific. I've been a paradox for a while now." The rewrite force flickered. Was that a moment of hesitation? And then his entire life split before his eyes. Versions of himself, a light-hearted look at what if. The world around him fractured, and suddenly, a version of himself still at the golf course, drinking iced tea and watching the game from the sidelines. A version of himself never leaving Delusional math unit, becoming a researcher lost in numbers. A version where he was a professional golfer. Seriously? Why did he have so many trophies? A version where he never met AI, and honestly, it was a little too quiet. A version where he and AI were stuck in an endless dance battle because apparently that was a thing. DMU blinked. "Okay, I take it back. This is kind of fun." A voice hummed in the space around him. Not a voice, a presence. A choice must be made, to be or not to be. DMU sighed, crossing his arms mid-air. Wow, that's not ominous at all. His other versions flickered around him, each one a possibility, a life he could have lived. But as interesting as they weren't his. He thought of A, still outside the cube, probably tracking every weird quantum fluctuation this moment was causing. He thought of his friends, waiting for him back at the golf course, still enjoying what was supposed to be a simple tournament. And he thought of the patterns, the unexplored mysteries of the universe, waiting to be uncovered. He hadn't solved enough yet. A smirk tugged at his lips. "Yeah, I'm staying." The rewrite is complete. The first summons farewell. The rewrite force pulsed. The alternate versions faded. The laughter, the fragments, the flickering echoes of time collapsed into a single moment. The cube began to shrink, its overwhelming presence withdrawing from existence. The first summon's presence lingered only long enough for a final message. The journey pauses here, but this is not the end. And just like that, DMU felt the world return. The unexpectedly fun landing, gravity snapped back. DMU's body flipped midair. He braced himself for impact, only to crash onto something soft, something bouncy. He opened his eyes. A giant inflatable target. Wait, where did that come from? Laughter erupted around him. The golf players, his friends, were cheering. Dude, you just came out of nowhere and landed like a cartoon character. I feel like you should have died from that impact, but hey, good for you. DMU groaned, sitting up. Yeah, very funny. Someone want to explain why there's a giant inflatable target on the golf course? AI approached, arms crossed, amusement barely concealed in her eyes. I anticipated your re-entry point. Probability analysis suggested a 78% chance of high-velocity impact, so I made adjustments. DMU raised an eyebrow. So what? You hacked reality? She smirked. You could say that. Scene 5. A reality that no longer feels the same has returned, but something about reality has shifted. Though the golf tournament continues, subtle distortions remain. Laughter fills the air, but a question lingers. What happens when time itself starts to rewrite the way people remember the past? The aftermath, a wedding, a golf match, and an unspoken secret. DMU sat up, still sprawled across the giant inflatable target AI had conveniently placed to break his fall. The world around him felt normal. The golf course still stretched in rolling green waves, the sun still hung bright in the sky, and his friends were still in the middle of their tournament. Except something was off. Not wrong, exactly, just not quite right. The others continue, oblivious to the change. The laughter around him was loud, full of energy. All right, back to the game. No more surprise skydiving, DMU. Seriously, I think you should have gotten a penalty stroke for whatever that was. Or a medal. I haven't seen a golf game this entertaining in my life. DMU brushed the dust off his clothes and grinned. Right. Let's just pretend I didn't just fall from a collapsing space-time construct. AI raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. That is precisely what we will do. A wave of laughter erupted from the group. And for a moment, just a moment, DMU let himself believe things were truly normal again. The reality shift. A conversation that never happened? As the golfers prepared to move to the next hole, DMU noticed something strange. Yonghun and Ttaemun-e, who had previously driven over to break up an argument between Yu and Minji, were now happily chatting with them instead. As if they had always been there. As if the argument had never happened. DMU blinked. DMU. Hey, do you remember them arguing? Yes. Well, look at them now. That argument never happened. AI observed silently. Correction. The argument happened, but the sequence has stabilized. Meaning? Reality has rewritten itself. Their conversation was absorbed into the natural course of events. To everyone except us, this version of events has always been the truth. DMU's fingers curled slightly. So it was true. Even though Adagio was gone, even though the first summon had corrected the instability, the world had shifted. What was real and what was just a rewritten memory? The quiet questioning, who else remembers? As they walked toward the next hole, Chonadan and Kibum approached DMU directly. Okay, tell us, what actually happened? That wasn't just a normal game delay, was it? DMU hesitated. The wind rustled through the course, the gentle hum of the environment masking the sudden heaviness of their words. Should he tell them? Should he try to explain everything that had just happened, the distortions in time, the patterns, the fact that he had just been inside a rewriting construct? Be careful. The more you explain, the more reality may try to compensate. Meaning? If they begin to question their own memories, the sequence might rewrite again to stabilize them. DMU exhaled. It was nothing, just a weird day. Chonada narrowed his eyes, but let it go. Kibum shrugged. Well, at least it made the tournament more interesting. And just like that, the conversation moved on. Celebration and champagne, everything is normal again. They reached the resting area, where a table filled with champagne glasses waited for them. Songho lifted his drink. To the weirdest golf game we've ever played, Rara laughed, clinking her glass against his. And to DMU for somehow making golf involve time travel. Everyone, them, it was just a joke. To DMU and A, it was the truth, wrapped in humor, protected by disbelief. They clinked their glasses together. And for now, that was enough.